have already learnt what a voice is. So a voice is the form of a verb which shows whether the subject of the verb is the doer or agent of the action denoted by the verb or not. Now voices are of two types, active and passive. In the active voice, subject is the doer of the action, as in this case, Sam kicked the ball. Here kicked is the verb and who performs the action? Sam. So Sam is the subject as well as the doer of the action. In the passive voice, the subject is the receiver of the action. So here the ball was kicked by Sam. So was kicked is the verb here. And what was kicked? The ball. So the ball is the subject of the sentence, but it is the receiver of the action. Now today, let us learn how to change a sentence from active to passive voice. Rakesh baked a cake. In this sentence, the verb is baked. Now, who baked a cake? It is Rakesh. So Rakesh is the subject of the sentence and it is also the doer of the action baked. So this sentence is in the active voice because the subject is the doer of the action. Now you will notice if I question what did Rakesh bake, the answer is a cake. So a cake is the object in this case. It is the object of the verb baked. Now whenever in the active voice we have a sentence which takes an object, then you will always know that the sentence can be changed into passive voice as well. Now if we have to change this sentence into passive voice, what will be our sentence? A cake was baked by Rakesh. So what do we see? We see that here a cake was the object, but in this case a cake becomes the subject. Why? Because the verb here is was baked. So if I question what was baked, the answer is a cake was baked. So here a cake becomes the subject of the sentence. So the first rule is the object in active voice becomes the subject in passive voice. Now let us look at the verb in the passive voice. What is it? Was baked. In the active voice, it was only baked. So what have we added? We have added the be verb and then we have kept the past participle form of the verb bake. Now in this case, the past tense form and the past participle form of the verb bake remains the same. So baked has remained baked and we have used a be verb before the main verb. So the next rule is the main verb requires the auxiliary be verb in passive voice. The third thing to be noted is the preposition by. You see the doer is Rakesh. Now here the doer was the subject of the sentence in active voice. So it was placed before the verb. But the doer in the passive voice takes a position after the verb and before that a preposition is added. So the preposition by is usually used before the doer in passive voice. So these are some of the basic things that need to be followed when we change a sentence in the active voice to its corresponding passive voice. Now look at this sentence. What is it? I have written a note. This sentence is in the active voice. Have written is the verb. Who has written? I have written. So the subject I is the doer of the action. Hence this sentence is in the active voice. Now if I have to change it into passive voice, my sentence becomes a note has been written by me. So what have we done? In the first sentence our object was a note. I have written what? A note. So a note becomes the subject in the passive voice. Then we have used the be plus past participle form of the verb. So has been written. After that, the preposition by, and then we have used the doer, me. Now, what is important to note here is that the subject pronoun in active voice becomes the object pronoun in the passive voice. So, what is the subject pronoun? I. So, I is in the subject position. So, we have used the subject pronoun. Now, we know that the object pronoun of I is me. Now, when I change from active to passive, the doer comes after the verb. So, it takes the form of the object pronoun me. Now, look at this sentence. The opponents defeated us. So, here defeated is the verb. Now, who defeated us? The opponents. So, the opponents is the subject as well as the doer of the action. But the object of this sentence is us. So, how are we going to write this sentence in the passive voice? We are going to write it as we were defeated by the opponents. Now, here what do we see? The us is the object pronoun. Now, if this comes in the subject position, we need a subject pronoun. So, what is the subject pronoun of us? It is we. So, we have used we as the subject in passive voice, followed by were defeated as per the be plus past participle form of the verb, and then we have used the preposition followed by the doer. So, what do we see here? The object pronoun in active voice becomes the subject pronoun in the passive voice. From these two examples, we have seen that the object and the subject, they exchange their positions when we are converting from active to passive voice. Now look at this example. The thief has stolen 2 bicycles. So here the verb is has stolen. Now, who has stolen? The thief has stolen. So, we see clearly that this sentence is in the active voice. Now, what is the object? 2 bicycles. What has the thief stolen? 2 bicycles. So, if we have to change the sentence into passive voice, 2 bicycles will come first. So, the sentence is written as 2 bicycles have been stolen by the thief. So, here have been stolen is the new verb form that we get in the passive voice, which follows the be plus past participle form. Then it is followed by the preposition by, and after that we have mentioned the doer, the thief. Now, what is important to note here is, in this case we had has stolen. In the second case we have used have been stolen. Why? Because the thief being a singular subject, we needed a singular verb after it. But when the object and the subject positions are interchanged in the passive voice, we see that our subject becomes plural in this case. So, we need a plural verb. So, we have written have been stolen. So, it is important to note that the verb agrees with the subject of the sentence. Now, look at this example. The gardener has sown the seeds that were bought from the nursery. Now, in this case, what is the verb? Well, if you notice, we have actually 2 verbs, has sown and were bought. Now, why are we not considering were bought? Because this entire part that were bought from the nursery is describing the noun seeds. So, if I question what has the gardener sown, my answer would be the seeds that were bought from the nursery. So, this verb were bought has no relation to the other part of the sentence. It is only related to this noun, and hence the main verb of the sentence is has sown. So, when we are going to convert this sentence into passive voice, this entire part, the seeds that were bought from the nursery, will become our subject. So, the sentence will be, the seeds that were bought from the nursery have been sown by the gardener. So, here the gardener is the doer, which is placed after the verb in the passive voice. Before that, we have used the preposition by, and the verb is have been sown. Now we'll note once again that the gardener denotes a singular subject and hence we have used a singular verb. But in the passive voice, what is our subject? The seeds that were bought from the nursery. But this is a long phrase. What is the head noun? It is the seeds. So the seeds have been sown by the gardener. Now this part that were bought is an extra information about the seeds. So that is not the relevant portion for us to consider which verb to use. The seeds being plural, we need a plural verb. So we see that the subject-verb agreement is very important when we are changing from active to passive voice. The frightened girl did not utter a word. Now here what do we see? Did not utter. So here we have a negative verb. The word not is giving a negative meaning to the entire sentence. Now if we have to convert such a sentence into passive voice, how do we write? We write not a word was uttered by the frightened girl. So what is it? First let us identify the subject in the active voice. The frightened girl did not utter what? The answer was a word. But when we are writing the passive voice, we write not a word. So what have we done? We have taken this not, placed it before a word, then this did utter is equivalent to the past tense, uttered, so was uttered. So we have taken the be verb in the past tense, then followed by the past participle form of the verb utter, and then the preposition followed by the doer of the action. Now you must be thinking why we have used not in the subject position. The not was linked to the verb. Now if you have written it as a word was not uttered by the frightened girl, even that sentence would have been correct. But a better way of writing such a sentence is not a word was uttered by the frightened girl. So you have to remember that if the active voice gives us a negative meaning, even in the passive voice, the sentence should give us a negative meaning. The gossip does not bother him anymore. Now here too we see there is a not, so this sentence is negative in its meaning. Now how do I write this sentence in the passive voice? So in the passive voice my sentence will be he is not bothered by the gossip anymore. Why? Because here my object is him. Now we have already learned that the object pronoun is turned into a subject pronoun in the passive voice. So him becomes he in the passive voice, followed by is not bothered. Now does bother is equivalent to bothers. So here I have written is not bothered. This not remains and does bother changes to is bothered in the passive voice, followed by the preposition and then the doer. After that the remaining part of the sentence comes as it is. So when you have auxiliary verb does in any sentence, you will note that it is in the present tense. Accordingly, when you change in the passive voice, the corresponding be verb is used with the past participle form of the main verb. And if there is a not in the active voice, there will be a not in the passive voice too. The authorities have cancelled some flights to Delhi due to heavy fog. Now this sentence is in the active voice. If I have to write it in the passive voice, I can write it as some flights to Delhi have been cancelled by the authorities due to heavy fog. So the subject, which is also the doer in this case, comes after the verb, and the object, some flights to Delhi, becomes the subject here. Now you will note that this sentence could have been written as some flights to Delhi have been cancelled due to heavy fog. We can simply omit the doer in this case. So the doer is sometimes omitted in the passive voice when it is quite obvious. So not anybody can cancel the flights. It's only the authority who has the right to do so. So even if it is not mentioned, it does not change the meaning of the sentence. The students know the answers. Now this sentence is also in the active voice. What do we see? The object is the answers, whereas the verb is know. Now the object will become the subject in the passive voice. So how do we write? The answers are known to the students. Now here we see the object in the active voice becomes the subject in the passive voice. Then the verb form takes the be plus past participle form of the main verb. So here know is the verb that turns into known, and we have used an auxiliary be verb are. Now you will note that the doer is the students, which has been mentioned after the verb. But notice the preposition. Till now in all the examples we have seen that we have used the preposition by. But here the answers are known by the students is not the correct way of writing. We write the answers are known to the students. So you have to know that prepositions other than by are used before the doer in some cases in the passive voice. So it is not always preposition by. You may also have to use other prepositions as in to here in order to write a sentence correctly. Hot air filled the balloon. Now this is again in the active voice. Our verb is filled. Hot air is the subject and also the doer of the action. The balloon is the object of this verb. So in the passive voice, my sentence will begin with the balloon and then I write it was filled. That is the be verb, then the past participle form of the verb, and then we have used the preposition with before the doer, hot air. So here we could not have used by. So once again we have seen that a preposition other than by is required before the doer or the agent in order to write a correct sentence. So our sentence becomes the balloon was filled with hot air. So what did we learn today? Today we have learned how to change a sentence in the active voice into one in the passive voice. And while doing so, we have seen that some important changes take place. What are they? The subject and the object exchange their positions. So what are they? The subject and the object exchange their positions. The verb takes on the suitable be plus past participle form and agrees in number and person with the subject. Also, a preposition is used before the agent or the doer in the passive voice. However, at times in passive voice the doer may or may not be mentioned. So, I hope you have understood how to change a sentence in the active voice into a passive voice. So, you can take up more examples of sentences in active voice and see how many you can turn into a passive voice. We will soon learn more about voices. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. You can also register for free at deltastep.com or download the DeltaStep app to get all learning resources as per ICSE, CBSE, IB, Cambridge or any other curriculum. Over 5,000 amazing lectures across maths, science, English and social science. Our unique interactive video technology keeps you engaged and our iDictionary feature allows you to quickly revise any concept. Master each topic at your own pace with our adaptive practice technology and 1 million plus questions. Get instant answers and detailed solutions. Be exam ready by taking unlimited mock tests, performance analysis along with actionable feedback, personal tutors to resolve your slightest of doubts. That's not all. You can also win amazing prizes like PlayStation, iPad, watches, and many more, along with certificates through our Earn As You Learn program. So at DeltaStep, learning is not just fun and easy, it is rewarding too. So register for free now.